When my wife, Claire, told me she was pregnant, I was overjoyed. We had been married for 7 years, and though our relationship had its ups and downs, I thought this was the blessing that would bring us closer. I painted the nursery, bought tiny clothes, and even started saving extra for the baby's future. But something was off. Claire seemed distant. She avoided my touch, and sometimes when I asked about the pregnancy, her answers felt cold, rehearsed, like she was hiding something. At first, I brushed it off as stress, but the uneasy feeling never left me. The day our daughter was born should have been the happiest of my life. I held her, tears in my eyes, but the doctor's words echoed strangely in my head when he said, "She looks nothing like her father." I laughed nervously, but inside my stomach dropped. The child's features didn't resemble mine at all. My family noticed too, though no one dared say it out loud. Weeks later, unable to shake the doubt, I secretly ordered a DNA test. I told myself I was being paranoid, until the results came back. The child was not mine. And that was the moment everything I thought I knew about my marriage shattered. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the DNA report, my hands trembling. The paper felt heavier than any burden I'd ever carried. Claire walked in, humming softly as she rocked the baby in her arms, and for a moment, I just looked at her, this woman I had trusted with everything. "Claire," I said slowly, my voice low but sharp. "We need to talk." She froze, sensing the change in my tone. "About what?" she asked, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. I slid the folded paper across the table. "About this." She didn't even open it before her shoulders stiffened. I knew then, she already knew what it said. Her lips parted, and she whispered, "It doesn't change anything. You've been the one raising her. You love her. That's what matters." I shook my head, anger burning in my chest. "What matters is the truth. You lied to me, Claire. You made me believe this was our child." She set the baby down in the crib, her hands trembling. "I made a mistake, but please, she needs you. I need you." But the betrayal was too deep. My love had been used as a cover for her secret. My voice turned cold. "If you thought I was going to raise another man's child while you smiled in my face, you've underestimated me. I'm taking this to court." Her face went pale. She realized I wasn't bluffing. This wasn't just about love anymore, this was about justice. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. My voice shook as I explained everything, the affair, the baby, the DNA test. The lawyer listened quietly, then said something that stuck with me, "If you don't stand up now, you'll be legally bound to a child that isn't yours for the rest of your life." That thought hit me like a hammer. I wasn't going to let Claire's deception chain me down forever. When Claire realized I had actually filed in court, she broke down crying. She tried everything, apologies, promises, even threats. "You'll ruin our family," she shouted one night. "Our family?" I snapped back. "You ruined it the day you let someone else into our marriage and then tried to hand me the result like it was mine." The weeks leading up to the hearing were tense. Friends and neighbors started noticing Claire's sudden silence and my absence from home. Rumors spread, but I stayed quiet. I wanted the truth to come out in the open, not through whispers. Finally, the court date arrived. I sat in that courtroom, heart pounding, while Claire avoided my gaze. She had her lawyer by her side, and I could see the desperation in her eyes. She still believed she could manipulate the outcome. But I wasn't the same man she once fooled. I was ready. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. My lawyer leaned in and whispered, "This is where the truth finally speaks louder than her lies." And I knew, today was the beginning of her undoing. The judge asked us both to stand. My chest felt tight, but I kept my eyes forward. Claire's lawyer began with a polished speech, painting her as a devoted wife who had simply made a mistake in judgment. She has been faithful in every way that matters, her lawyer argued. This child has only ever known my client's husband as her father. To separate them would be cruel. I clenched my fists under the table. Faithful? A mistake in judgment? It wasn't a one-time slip, it was months of deception, lies, and betrayal. When it was my lawyer's turn, he didn't waste a second. He held up the DNA report. Your Honor, the evidence is undeniable. This child is not biologically my client's. Yet his wife deliberately misled him, attempting to bind him into a lifelong responsibility that isn't his to carry. The judge leaned forward, frowning. Mrs. Thompson, did you knowingly conceal this from your husband? Claire's lips quivered. I was scared. I thought if he found out, he'd leave me. I didn't want to lose him. I finally spoke, my voice firm but controlled. You didn't just risk losing me, Claire. You destroyed the trust that made us who we were. You tried to trap me into raising a child that isn't mine, while hiding the truth. The courtroom was silent. Even Claire's lawyer had no words. The judge tapped his pen against the desk. This is a serious matter. The court cannot reward deception. And with that, the tide began to turn. Claire's face crumbled as the judge ordered the DNA report to be admitted into evidence. Her eyes darted around the room, desperate for sympathy, but all she found were cold stares. I could see the reality sinking in, her carefully built facade was collapsing in front of everyone. Her lawyer tried one last move. Your Honor, while biology is clear, we must consider the emotional bond. This man has cared for the child since birth. Surely, the best interest of the child must come first. The judge turned to me. Mr. Thompson, do you feel a bond with this child? The entire room seemed to hold its breath. I swallowed hard. Your Honor, I care about every child, but the bond between a father and his child begins with truth. I was denied that truth. What bond exists here is built on deception, and I cannot live a lie for the rest of my life. Claire gasped like I had struck her. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, Please, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll do anything. I shook my head slowly. The time for honesty was before you lied. Now, it's too late. The judge nodded solemnly. Very well. This court finds that Mr. Thompson is not the legal father of the child. All obligations of paternity are hereby removed. Claire collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. For me, it wasn't victory, it was liberation. I walked out of that courtroom knowing one thing, she had tried to trap me, but instead, she set me free. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe. The sun hit my face, and it felt like a reminder that life wasn't over, it was just beginning again, without lies holding me down. But Claire wasn't finished. That same evening, she showed up at my doorstep, mascara streaked down her cheeks, holding the baby in her arms. You can't just walk away from us, she begged, her voice shaking. She needs you. I need you. I stared at her, my heart torn between anger and pity. Claire, you made your choice when you chose him over us. Don't put that weight on me now. She doesn't deserve this, she cried, rocking the baby desperately. She's innocent. I softened for a moment. I know she is. And that's why she deserves to know the truth someday, who her real father is. But that isn't me, Claire. And no amount of begging will change that. Her face hardened suddenly, the tears drying into fury. You'll regret this. Everyone will know what you did. They'll see you as a heartless man who abandoned a child. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. No, Claire. They'll see you for what you are, the one who betrayed her marriage and tried to cover it up with lies. I'm done protecting your image. She stood there trembling, caught between rage and despair, before finally turning and walking away into the night. For the first time, I didn't feel like the victim anymore. I felt like the one who had finally taken control. Word spread quickly in our small community. At first, people whispered behind my back, unsure of what really happened. But once the court ruling became public, the whispers turned into open stares, not at me, but at Claire. Neighbors who once praised her as the perfect wife now crossed the street to avoid her. Friends she had confided in stopped answering her calls. The carefully polished image she'd worn for years shattered overnight. I, on the other hand, began receiving quiet nods of support. Some men pulled me aside, telling me they admired the strength it took to stand up in court. Others admitted they had noticed her odd behavior long before but never said a word. One afternoon, while I was sitting in a cafe, an old friend leaned across the table and said, "You did the right thing. If you hadn't, she would have dragged you down for life." Still, part of me wrestled with guilt. Not guilt for leaving Claire, she had made her bed, but guilt for the child who was caught in the middle. None of this was her fault. That night, I wrote a letter addressed to the little girl, to be given to her when she was older. I explained that I wasn't her father, but that she deserved to know the truth. I told her that my fight in court wasn't against her, it was against lies. It was the only way I could make peace with myself. Meanwhile, Claire's silence didn't last. She was planning something. I could feel it. It didn't take long for Claire to make her move. A week later, I received a letter from her lawyer. She was demanding spousal support, claiming that I had abandoned her and left her with nothing. I laughed bitterly when I read it. Abandoned her? After everything she had done? No, this wasn't about survival, it was about revenge. When we stood in court again, Claire tried to paint herself as the victim. Her lawyer argued that I had humiliated her publicly and left her in financial ruin. She cried on the stand, clutching tissues, trying to convince everyone that I was cold and unfeeling. But my lawyer was ready. He calmly laid out the facts. Claire had not only betrayed me, but she had also attempted to commit paternity fraud, something the court had already recognized. He presented evidence of her affair, messages and photos I never wanted to see again but had been forced to gather. The judge listened carefully, then turned to Claire. "Mrs. Thompson, you cannot deceive your spouse, attempt to hold him responsible for a child that is not his, and then come here seeking financial benefit from the very man you wronged. This court will not reward such behavior." The gavel came down. Claire's request was denied. She looked at me then, her face pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time, I saw it clearly, she wasn't just losing a case. She was losing control of the narrative she had tried to spin. And I was finally free, not just legally, but emotionally. After that second court battle, the air around me felt different. For the first time in months, I could walk into a room without the weight of Claire's lies pressing on my shoulders. But Claire wasn't handling the fallout well. Friends had drifted away, her reputation was in pieces, and the man she had the affair with, her supposed love, wanted nothing to do with her now that the truth was public. He had vanished the moment things got complicated, leaving her to face the storm alone. One evening, as I locked up my workshop, I saw Claire waiting across the street. She looked exhausted, her clothes wrinkled, her hair unkempt, so different from the polished woman she once was. "Please, just hear me out," she called softly, stepping closer. Against my better judgment, I stood still. "I made mistakes," she said, her voice trembling. "I lost everything, my husband, my family, my reputation. I don't know how to move forward." Her words hung in the air. For a brief second, I almost felt pity. But then I remembered the sleepless nights, the lies, the way she tried to force me into a life that wasn't mine. "You move forward," I replied quietly, "by owning the truth. Stop trying to twist it. Stop blaming others. This is on you." She looked down, tears dripping onto the pavement. For the first time, she didn't argue. She just nodded weakly and walked away. And I knew then that while her story was collapsing, mine was just beginning again, without her. In the weeks that followed, life began to settle into a strange calm. I poured my energy into work, hobbies I had long abandoned, and reconnecting with people I had neglected during my marriage. Every day felt like I was slowly reclaiming myself. Still, the shadows of the past lingered. Some mornings I woke up expecting to hear Claire in the kitchen, or to see the baby's crib in the corner of the room. But then reality would hit me, and I'd remind myself, those ghosts were gone, and that was a good thing. One afternoon, I received a call from Claire's sister. She hesitated before speaking, then said, "She's not doing well. She feels like she has nothing left. Maybe if you just talk to her, it would help." I sighed heavily. I can't fix what she broke. That's not my responsibility anymore. Her sister was quiet for a moment before replying, "Maybe not. But I think she finally understands what she lost." That night, I sat alone, staring at the letter I had written for the child. I thought about how one day, she would grow up and discover the truth, not just about her real father, but about her mother's choices. And I made a decision: my future wouldn't be built on bitterness. Claire had taken enough from me. I refused to let her steal the rest of my life through anger. I was free, and now it was up to me to live like it. Not long after, I began to notice something unexpected: peace. For the first time in years, I woke up without a knot in my stomach. I no longer checked my phone in fear of discovering another secret. The silence in the house, once painful, became comforting. It was the sound of freedom. Claire, however, continued to spiral. I'd hear bits and pieces through mutual acquaintances. She struggled to find work, people distanced themselves, and the man she had risked everything for had completely abandoned her. It was as if her entire world collapsed the moment the truth came out. One evening, while walking home from the store, I saw her again. She was sitting alone on a park bench, staring at nothing. When she noticed me, her eyes filled with shame. She didn't call out, didn't beg, just gave a faint, broken smile. For the first time, I felt no anger, only clarity. What had once been my greatest heartbreak had transformed into a hard but necessary lesson. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, "Love without honesty is not love at all. Trust is the foundation, and once it's gone, everything crumbles." That became my truth, the line I would carry forward. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing: it would be mine to build, unshackled from lies. Months passed, and life slowly began to bloom again. I started traveling for work, meeting new people, and even daring to laugh without the weight of betrayal holding me down. Every step felt like proof that I had survived something that once seemed unbearable. One day, I ran into an old college friend at a conference. Over coffee, I told him bits of what had happened, leaving out the darkest details. He listened, then said something that struck me deeply: "Sometimes life breaks us just to remind us what we're capable of rebuilding." That night, I thought about those words. I had been broken, yes, but I wasn't ruined. I had rebuilt myself piece by piece, stronger than before. Claire's name no longer stirred anger in me. Instead, it was just a reminder of a chapter closed. She had tried to tie me down with lies, but in the end, the truth had set me free. And the letter I had written to the child? I tucked it safely away, determined to keep it until the right time. Because one day, she would deserve to know that I hadn't abandoned her. I had simply chosen not to live a lie. The scars of betrayal would never fully vanish, but they became part of my story, shaping me into a man who valued honesty above all else. I had lost a marriage, yes, but I had found something greater: myself. Seasons changed, and with them, so did I. What once felt like the end of my world had quietly become the beginning of a new one. I poured myself into building a life that wasn't defined by betrayal. I picked up my guitar again, something I hadn't touched in years. I reconnected with old friends, some of whom admitted they'd seen warning signs long before I ever did. Slowly, I realized that I wasn't just moving on, I was thriving. But one evening, an unexpected knock came at my door. When I opened it, Claire was there. She looked older somehow, as though the weight of her choices had aged her in just a short time. She held the little girl's hand. "She asked about you," Claire said quietly. Her voice wasn't combative this time. It was fragile. "She wanted to know why you're not around." My chest tightened. The little girl looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. She didn't know the web of lies that had been spun around her life. I knelt down, managing a soft smile. "Hi there," I said gently. "You're very brave to come see me." Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. For once, there were no excuses, no manipulations, just silence. I knew then that this moment wasn't about her. It was about the child. And though I wasn't her father, I also wasn't her enemy. I nodded slowly. "Someday, when you're older, you'll understand everything. But for now, just know you're stronger than you think." The girl smiled faintly, and for a fleeting moment, peace filled the doorway. After that night, I realized closure doesn't always come with a courtroom verdict or a final argument. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, like a child's innocent smile reminding you that life moves forward, even after betrayal. Claire and I never reconciled. Our marriage was gone, and nothing could bring it back. But that brief encounter showed me something important. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing, it means letting go of the weight someone else tried to place on your shoulders. I let go. I focused on my future, on building a life rooted in honesty and integrity. I surrounded myself with people who valued truth as much as I did. And in time, love found its way back into my life, not the fragile, deceptive kind I had once known, but something steady, clear, and real. As for the child, I kept the letter safe. One day, when she's old enough, she'll know the truth, that I walked away from lies, not from her. She'll know that I fought in court not out of cruelty, but because every person deserves to live with honesty, not deception. Looking back, I realized that what began as heartbreak ended as liberation. Claire's betrayal didn't destroy me, it revealed who I truly was, a man who refused to be defined by someone else's lies. And as I closed that chapter for good, I whispered to myself the words I had waited so long to say, "I'm free." Years later, I looked back on that chapter of my life with a sense of gratitude I never expected to feel. What had once seemed like the ultimate betrayal had become the very storm that forced me to rebuild myself into someone stronger, wiser, and freer. Claire faded from my world. I heard she moved to another city, trying to start over where fewer people knew her story. I held no anger toward her anymore, just distance. She had written her choices into stone, and I had chosen not to carry them with me. The child grew up, and though I wasn't part of her life, I always kept the letter safe. When the time was right, I passed it on through someone I trusted. In it, I explained everything, the truth about her birth, my fight in court, and most importantly, that she was never to blame. I wanted her to know she was born innocent, even if her mother's choices were not. By then, I had built a new family, one forged on trust and honesty. The scars of the past didn't vanish, but they reminded me daily of what I valued most, truth. Without it, love was just an illusion. Standing in my backyard one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something powerful. Claire's lies had nearly destroyed me, but they had also set me on a path toward a life I never would have found otherwise. I whispered the words again, but this time they carried no bitterness, only peace. "I'm free."